Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. And thank you, DigiMarcon, for having me at this event. As Aaron mentioned, I am Matt Hensler, um, the Vice President Digital Integration at ColinKurtis Advertising. We are a full service advertising agency um, that works primarily in the food and beverage space. So we work with a variety of different clients, which are food ingredient brands, food manufacturing, consumer products, research for food brands. So it's a great mix of kind of working in different markets and having different audiences as well. So today I'm really going to talk about the B2B space and really what that means for your brand. A lot of these can be applied to consumer practices on social media as well. I found that the same principles really do exist between consumer marketing and B2B marketing as well. So there's just a little bit of different tactics and things that you want to apply, but more or less, you're kind of building the same principles as well. So really, when I really work on social, I focus on three main goals. And so that first one is really building a community, building an audience, building awareness. So really, that first step is just kind of getting out there and building it. When I really started doing social, um, and as Zenny mentioned earlier too, I started my career in the recession. So really try to figure out and navigate that path. And so I went to school for PR and always saw myself kind of being a publicist or working in that environment. That was kind of my goal. And social was just coming out. So I actually saw that as an opportunity. I started freelancing in social media as I was working in house for USA Today. I was more on kind of on traditional marketing side. At that time, I realized print was fading out. So working at USA Today, I was just like, I've got to start getting social skills. So I was freelancing, working with small businesses, startups, and really just trying to navigate this path. And so that allowed me the opportunity to really get into social before a lot of agencies even were dabbling in it. So I was able then to build my own agency focusing on social media. I partnered with a lot of different PR agencies at the time that had no clue how to get into social media. They had very traditional PR, just working with outlets. Some of them were working with bloggers at the time before influencers were um, the big thing. And so it was really interesting just kind of creating this path and just kind of being ahead of the curve. And so I was able to partner with a lot of these larger brands because they had no idea how to manage social media. And so just taking those risks and getting ahead was really important. And just kind of being an entrepreneur and figuring it out along the way. Nobody had a clue how to do social at the time. So you're really just kind of figuring it out. And as my career's evolved, I've definitely had to grow in different ways. And so a lot of things, especially the small businesses that I was working with um, and startups, I would always start with them social first usually, and then building that relationship them was key. And so I was able to grow into different areas and figure things out along the way, whether they needed a new website. And I had a great network. I mean, I started as a one person agency and then was really able to kind of expand and was like, I would network with people and like, they'd be a web developer. I'm like, okay, can you do a freelance project? Because I have a client that wants a new website. So I was able to start offering more services by expanding my network as well. But really, just kind of building those social platforms and picking the right platforms for each client was really key into how I always look at a client. We have several clients, and if you think about like a food ingredient and where they would be, I'll get clients ask me like, "Oh, we should be on TikTok," and I'm like, "Why? Why do you want to be there?" And I think the biggest thing is really just picking those right platforms, and deciding what it is. So, and what your message is. Each platform is so different. We primarily will focus on LinkedIn, sometimes to add in Facebook, Twitter for the B2B clients. But they all have their own um, messaging strategies. So, really kind of focusing on like the humanization side if they're using Instagram, and really looking at that. Not every platform is equal, or just because it's there doesn't mean you have to use it. The second really focus that I look at is just really kind of driving either engagement or conversions, just figuring out what your goal of social is and kind of what you want to accomplish with it. And then lastly, especially on the B2B side, we all like leads. So driving different lead conversions, and there's different ways to do that that I'll talk about later on as well. So looking at social, I'm sure that we're all using social personally and professionally. And so it's really kind of figuring out what your social voice is and really driving that in. And so the agency that I'm at right now, they actually launched as a very traditional agency, did a lot of print. We talk about like our income statement and how things have shifted over 26 years that the agency's been around. And obviously, digital wasn't a thing 26 years ago. And the amount of print costs that we spend is significantly less. And so, when I came into the agency, it was really kind of starting this digital transformation and leading the team and to kind of really thinking about it. So, um, if you think about kind of more print ads and more ad copy, it's a lot of um, talking in third person. So that was a big thing of just trying to get the agency. Um, and I've had this along my career too, like talk about yourself in the first person, make it a little bit more personalized. So adding that personality, figuring out what that is. We have clients that are very strict. I mean, we have Fortune 100 clients that, everything pretty much has to go through like legal, regulatory, and really just trying to get them a little bit more relaxed. And actually, over kind of the years with this Fortune 100 client, we've been able to get them to be a little bit more relaxed on social. So we actually did a test for LinkedIn ads. We did one that was a formal voice, one that was an informal voice. And we did four different ad types. So we did message ads and then conversation ads on LinkedIn. And the informal ones, we were able to use emojis in, which was exciting because you can still use emojis in B2B and on LinkedIn. People really do engage with them. So it was really interesting that they were open to this as we're kind of pushing it. But it took me probably 2, 3 years to get them to kind of move a little bit further. So it does take time and just kind of getting um, that social voice and kind of getting that personality out and figuring out that a social voice can be different than your brand message or like what you would put out for financial statements. So moving into content verticals, so I drive our content planning as well. So we have content calendars for our clients that include everything that we're doing. So we'll kind of start with like what trade shows they're going to, what events they're going to. Are we doing any media buys and publications? Do we have um, any blogs that we need to schedule out? Or is there an email campaign? Are we updating the website? Anything like that. And so when we're kind of building out the social part of it, we're really looking at what the goal is of this message and kind of if we're having a campaign involved or just trying to get out some brand awareness. So I really focus on four different content verticals. And the first one is brand equity. So that's really just looking at who you are as a brand, and getting that message across. So You could talk about the history of the brand. You could talk about um, those signature like brand message key points of just kind of who you are, what you're doing, if you have a sustainability message or anything like that. Promotional is the next one. And so that's really kind of focused on campaigns. Being in the B2B space, you can have campaigns and offer. It really kind of depends on the client and your brand and what you're looking at, but there are opportunities to have that. Personally, we do that a lot more on the B2C side, doing different campaigns, whether we're doing a sweepstakes or something like that. And then brand advocates. This is really key to B2B. And I don't think it gets talked about enough. And it really is employees, customers are the biggest brand advocates. And so I actually launched an employee advocacy program at a former company, really on the B2B side. And it was really interesting just to see the employees and how they started engaging. We had a leaderboard, and everyone was super competitive with getting the right amount of points and like, oh, this person's getting this much, So it was really exciting. We did a lot of prizes, getting gift cards and things like that, just to really motivate people to use it a lot more. Did a lot of training sessions, gave them ideas of what to post. We share different content, different articles that they could post out there as well. So I've actually done training with sales teams as well and giving them the opportunity of like things that they can talk about on social because social selling is such a big thing in the B2B space as well. But really focusing on those employees and then customers are great brand advocates on the B2B side. If you really think about a customer, if you can get them to be a testimonial on social or anything like that, it really just drives that realness and gives credibility to what you're offering. And then lastly, focusing on the product seems the most obvious, but talking about your offerings, whether you have a portfolio of products or just focusing on one. Another key point for um, social media is really focusing on hashtags and social listening. Um, Again, kind of in the B2B space, it's not necessarily used as much. And it's really important when you're using these to have the right hashtags on there and really take advantage of them because um, a lot of people aren't using them properly or following them, things like that. So, really, for hashtag purposes, you can follow them and get in the conversation and get your brand awareness out a lot more and really start owning that space a little bit more and searching it. How many people are following this hashtag? Because I'm mostly in the food beverage space. I use nutrition as an example, but you'll see this one has 65,000 followers, and people are really following this just on LinkedIn. So imagine looking at different platforms and how big that can be. The other thing too is to really kind of look at social listening. Um, I think over the years, social listening has faded out a little bit as social media has evolved. When I started, it was very organic, um, and now it's heavily a pay to play space, except TikTok, which will probably evolve at some point as well. And so, what I've kind of seen is people aren't listening as much. They're more just putting ads out. So there is still that important factor of just kind of seeing what's going on social and looking at those trends. Um, LinkedIn actually had a global wellness day as a hashtag a couple weeks ago. And we actually saw that because it was sent out in their newsletter. And we have a supplement brand that we work with on the B2B side. And I was like, okay, we got to take advantage of this. We have a blog coming out. So let's incorporate this hashtag for that post. So just kind of staying on top of those things and really being aware definitely does help generate some brand traffic as well. So another aspect too is just really that reputation management and responding. People like to be acknowledged. I've said that since the beginning of social media, the biggest thing that I've really been fascinated with social media is that two-way communication. That's really different from any marketing tactic. And I think that's the exciting part of it is you can get that real-time feedback. It could be negative, it could be a disaster, but you're getting that feedback um, from people and you're hearing their voice. I worked, especially when I worked in the entertainment segment. I've worked for Dish Networks and I've helped out with the Hallmark channel as well. But people will really tell you their opinion, whether they hate a movie, they hate a show, um, if some reason there's like a contract negotiation, if your satellite goes out, they will complain. So it's really interesting just kind of see what people react to and things like that. When I was heavily working with the Hallmark channel as well, they really started being a little bit more diverse, and that kind of turned some people away. They had a CEO that eventually got let go because he kind of retracted from their mission of trying to be a little bit more diverse. And so they had a new CEO, and she was great of like, no, we're doing more diversity. That's what we're doing. And so um, it was a big thing of like, if you don't want to watch it anymore, um, this is what we're doing. So you either have to accept it or not. So it's been great. It was great to really kind of see that push, but people did get really upset at first and just kind of being a little bit more open. But it was really great to see the evolution of the first major movies that had a little bit more diversity. And then like a year later, people weren't what didn't even think about it as much. So um, that's really a great way to just really kind of listen to your audience and see what they're doing and take a stand on what you're looking at as well. Um, I kind of have a rule of thumb. This is just what I use for best practice. Negative responses, I will acknowledge them. Um, it's best to really kind of take that if you can to a private message or something like that. If you're getting an argument, people will go on and on back and forth, and it looks ridiculous. So, if you can take it to a private message, that's what I always recommend. And if they repeat negative comments or if they're harassing somebody, we just have this rule of thumb like you're going to be blocked. So um, that's the rule that we use. I mean, we let all of our clients know that too. Like, we're not like you're not going to harass an employee or talk negatively about anybody, like a product or anything like that. If it's um, like too intense or they're just kind of like a repeat offender. So that's always kind of interesting, just to really kind of set those own rules for your brand. Another aspect is really kind of defining your KPIs. And so I always look at audience growth, engagement, clicks, and leads as kind of the four main KPIs that I set. And there's just kind of examples. So I don't know if any of you use any social media management tools, but I love Sprout Social. So I've used it pretty much since they started. So it's great and how they've evolved. I know there's other platforms out there that work just as well. But this is an example of a report and just kind of figuring out that mix. But for my team, we really kind of focus on quarterly and annual goals. And so we look at new follower growth, impression growth, engagement growth, click growth, web traffic growth, lead gen growth. And then for the ads that we run, we really look at cost per click, click through rate, and then cost per lead. So it's a lot of KPIs and goals, but we do monitor that and give quarterly and then annual reports to our clients. So looking at the platforms, this is primarily for what we do at ColinKurtis, but and as I mentioned, you really do have to figure out like who your brand is, where they should be, what your goal is to be on that platform. Um, if you are looking at um, kind of starting some sort of movement, and kind of looking at that and really looking at, like, is TikTok good for me? It could be really awesome. There are B2B brands that are doing amazing on it. If you look at Google. That was a great example of just kind of what they're doing with their career certifications as well. So there are some really cool B2B examples on TikTok, but for our clients, it's not something we're looking at right now. But for LinkedIn, we really recommend looking at 2 to 5 times a week. And we will kind of split this up depending on our client size, and kind of what their messaging is from that. We do have some clients we only do twice a month, and really just kind of run ads a little bit longer, or we just run organic for them. It really just depends on their budget and kind of what we have to work with from that, and really kind of making the most impact that we can with those dollars. Um, and then we look at other platforms, especially Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and really trying to define what those are for them. Um, with Facebook, some of our clients, they have um, more manufacturing plants. I mean, if you think about kind of food ingredients and equipment, things like that, they are a lot of like plant jobs. So that audience typically isn't on LinkedIn. So that's why we kind of do those kind of recruiting or um, brand messaging, like community, why it's great to work here, post on like Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, things like that. So we'll look at kind of posting that as well. Another aspect, I actually just came from a trade show right before this, and it's one of the largest one in our space. And so we had about 9 clients there, and they all had different booths. And so we we had about 12 people from our agency go. We would take photos of the booths and kind of demonstrations that they would have, get a team photo, see kind of what competitors are doing as well, but getting those photos in real time on social there. And so it's really great to kind of use that for LinkedIn, but also like Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. Getting that human side out of the brand definitely helps on those platforms for the B2B space. And then this is just a little cheat sheet that we use internally for just kind of Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, which is great to have. So if you don't have it, feel free to take a picture real quick. They do change a lot. So it could change next week. Who knows? And then, so these are some tips on LinkedIn. So looking at character length, this is really something that's important. I would say some people tend to go a little bit long, and when I first came to the agency that I'm at now, the posts were long, and I was like, nobody reads these. So the biggest thing was kind of the takeaway, and like figure out what the goal is of this, and so I mean, we would before I started, they would post like half the blog in a post, and it's like, well, we want them to go to the website and read the blog. So if you're going to put the blog here, then there's no reason to have like a link in there. So I was like, we need to give them a teaser and then have them click to go to the blog. And so that's really kind of how we've evolved. And I'm sure you've seen posts on LinkedIn too that have that see more, and are you really gonna click on it? Probably not, unless you're really interested in it. So, we try to do 50 to 100 characters, or around 25 words. We found that the cutoff is at 128 characters where you get that see more button. So we try to stay under that. Of course, it doesn't always happen, but um, we try as much as possible. Um, the biggest thing I see on LinkedIn is people aren't changing the image for a link. Um, and it's one of the easiest things to do. You can change that thumbnail image right on LinkedIn. We actually do that for every post. We have a custom LinkedIn photo for any links that we put out. So it's a really cool thing that you can do. With LinkedIn, still, you don't have to own the website to it. So if we get any media hits or anything like that, we can like pull out a quote, make that the thumbnail image for LinkedIn. Facebook went away with doing that just to kind of prevent the misinformation out there. You actually have to own the domain to be able to change it, but LinkedIn, you still can do that. So it's a really cool thing that I don't see a lot. So it's kind of a cool trick. Um, for video length and size, we try to make them under 30 seconds. Really kind of impactful with that first 6 seconds, really kind of focusing on short form content as that's been evolving in the last couple of years as well. This is an interesting stat that we found that we do use. We have seen it worked in different posts. The smallest thing is just using the exclamation mark instead of a period. Um, it tends to get more engagement. So um, it's really weird that that small little thing impacts it, but it does. And then questions. We've kind of tested different things too, of just like people asking like, "What do you think about this?" or "What's your next move?" or anything like that. And I have seen like those don't necessarily work as well. So it also kind of it can make you look bad as well if nobody comments if you're posing a question. So that way, if you can kind of own it a little bit more and do that, we have used polls and to get some engagement and things like that. But more or less, just kind of asking questions in a post isn't always the best idea, just because people might not answer at all, and then you have no responses. Um, and another thing is too is just kind of the M dash. It's a big thing on social, and just kind of the readability of putting a space before and after it helps break it up a lot on social. Especially, I mean, if you think about how people are using social even more and more, is they're using it more on their mobile devices. So just that small screen, it does help break it up a little bit. Um, since COVID, we really saw our clients increase mobile web traffic, and especially in the B2B space and in the food ingredient space. Um, that audience isn't necessarily always the most tech savvy. So the fact that mobile is shifting, like we have one of our clients that was pre COVID, it was like 80% desktop, 20% mobile. And now it's like 60/40, 60 being mobile. So some of them have switched a lot. There are still some that we have really strong desktop presence. So it really just depends. But it's important to look at those analytics and see how people are engaging with either social platforms or on your website too. And then for hashtags, recommend three or less and really just kind of focus and being relevant to the post. So I'm not sure if any of you use LinkedIn newsletters or subscribe to any of them. They are relatively new. Um, so they're regularly published articles that come out. You can essentially put blogs there repurposed for LinkedIn. Anything that's tied to your email newsletter, you can put that out as well. It's a good way to kind of not have to send out an email newsletter always, because I don't know how many of you subscribe to email newsletters, but I rarely read them. So I have too many other emails. I have separate inbox for them. I don't even pay attention to them half the time. So I do read a lot more LinkedIn, but that's me personally, just because I'm in social space heavily. So I prefer to look at it there on my convenience as well. But what's really cool is you can kind of keep engaging with your audience and interact with people in different ways. So it's a cool tool that they have. And then just kind of example of one here. So you can add an image, really kind of get that article out there. It also gives a great way to put some thought leadership out there as well. Okay, so moving into paid social, and this is really kind of focused on LinkedIn. And so LinkedIn makes it really cool if you've used their campaign manager before. You can break it down into awareness, consideration, or conversions. really just kind of looking at brand awareness, engagement, or lead generation. And so um, these are the different tools that you can use. They do have some for talent leads if anybody helps with that with their social team as well. Um, we've used a lot of these, mostly brand awareness, visits, engagements, video views, and lead gen. And there's really cool different ways to tap into that as well. And so these are the different types of ads. We have the single image ads. So that's really just kind of that sponsored content, the posts that you're doing day to day as well. And then the carousel images, I'm sure you've seen those where you kind of slide through the different images as well. And then video ads, there's text ads, spotlight ad, and that's the one that's right in the sidebar on desktop. And then a message ads goes to those inbox. I'm sure we've all received those um, sponsored messages and probably ignored them. And then the conversation ad is a little bit more personal. It's kind of like a chat bot for LinkedIn. Um, it's really cool because you can really get a path for the person. I prefer those to message ads because message ads have to be pretty straightforward. But I've seen success both in message and conversation ads as well. And then there's event ad as well. So this is an example of image ad. And then, so this is just a sponsored post that we did. And so this is one of our clients that we worked with. They have a fat replacement ingredient that they use with different brands. And so I actually took inspiration. We kind of did this in a series of posts. And I don't know if you've ever seen like the Eat This, Not That books and things online. And so that's really where we kind of took the creative inspiration for it and really kind of took that into the B2B space. Um, because sometimes like when you're scrolling through LinkedIn too, it's like you just see like stock photos and things like that. So really kind of adding some creativity to it. And so it really worked well for the different sectors that we were doing it with as well. Um, and so it's a good way to show like use our ingredient. This is how much it can help reduce calories or fat. So it's a really cool example of that one. And then this is an example of a carousel image. This is one of our clients. They work with both dairy ingredients, and then they've moved into the plant-based space as well to kind of have dairy alternatives. So we're just talking about kind of the non-dairy and organic markets. And this is really to promote a white paper that we did for them. And then this is an example of a video ad. So this is one that it promotes fiber. So really looking at digestive health, not always the most interesting topic, but it's great for people looking for that. Like for this ad, we really targeted like research and development teams at food manufacturers that are kind of really looking at that. And then this is an example of a message ad. And this is the one that we actually did a test on kind of informal voices too. And so it's really kind of getting out there about this trends report that we did. And then this is an example of a conversation ad. We actually did one for our agency as well. And this was, we were actually just at this trade show. It's called IFT. It's a food ingredient trade show. And so our new business rep was promoting that we're going to be there trying to set up appointments and really look at that. So we sent them to our blog. I'm really kind of talking about their post trade show strategy and kind of giving best practices for that. And then we had a Let's Connect there. So they were able to kind of then set an appointment and fill out a form for us to set up an appointment on site. And then we send them to our work/case studies page as well. But as you kind of click through those, it'll either take you to another page or it can prompt another response or it can open a lead gen form, just kind of how you're funneling that the conversation flow. Okay, so lastly, just wanted to look at some case studies that we have. So, um, for social media across the board with all of our clients, We did just kind of this snapshot of just kind of how we've improved social media across the board for them. And we do have some clients that are on multiple platforms. These stats do include our consumer stats as well, and we have some on Pinterest and TikTok as well. Um, and so across the board, we saw a 389% in engagement year over year, 344% impression growth, 240% click growth. And then our traffic from social to the client's websites went up 323%. Um, and so this is really kind of just a cool snapshot of just kind of what you can showcase to different clients, and you can see different um, examples of posts on the right as well. And then this is one of our clients. They've actually had quite a bit of growth in the last couple of years. They've acquired a few companies as well. And so we actually started working with them in 2021. And they weren't really doing a lot of creativity on social. And so we were really able to kind of take that and really kind of look at the offerings that they have. And so they do extracts, and it's all natural. Whether they use different like tea extracts, coffee extracts, like celery juice to really kind of preserve deli meat and sausage and things like that as well. But we saw a huge growth in impressions for them. They were up over 3,000%. Engagements were up 460%. And then we actually did some like custom photography for them and different videos as well that really helped with engagements. And we did a lot of different LinkedIn ads for them. Um, and the click through rate was 56% above the industry benchmarks, which is typically 0.25, 0.4% click through rate. And then we saw social clicks increase 548%. And then web traffic from social was up 433%. So it's really interesting to kind of look at not just engagement growing up, but people are also going to the website and they're engaging more on the website and interacting with the brand more. Any questions at all? Yes.
Hold on, let me grab the speaker.
You mentioned testing and copy formal and informal voice,
Mhm.
which is really interesting. Did you like how do you avoid the channel feeling um like was there any risk in changing that personality? So like how did you structure that test to avoid people being like, oh, it's not making sense. Like it's really casual and then it's more formal.
Yeah, exactly. So we for those we actually did ads for. So those were really targeted. They were ads to an audience in Africa. And so it was specifically geo targeted to that audience. And we did a lot of research too about just kind of personalities in Africa and really kind of looking at that. And so there was four different ads that went out, two message ads, two conversation ads, and then one informal and one formal for both. And it was a big thing where we had to really convince our clients that we needed to get a little bit more informal. We wanted to showcase emojis, and they're they have tried to evolve over the years of just not being so corporate and structured, and so they've had some new talent come in as well, and so that was a big thing that kind of helped us like be the expert. And they knew that, I think they knew like we got to listen to them because um it just wasn't, they hadn't had success before. They wanted to get leads, they wanted to get conversions. And so I think just kind of they took a step back and built that in a little bit more. I would say day to day, their posts are still kind of a little bit more on the conservative side. But I think that biggest thing is just kind of like taking that risk and then challenging it as well. And I mean, similar. to your aspect of the influencers, it is hard to let go. And so we've really kind of, from the consumer side, the influencers that we work with, we've really kind of had those natural relationships where we try to kind of let them run with it a little bit as well. And so I think sometimes it's just really taking that step back and realizing, like, okay, we should be a little bit more informal. If you think about social media, like, it's supposed to be social, it's supposed to be fun. And that's, one of my hardest parts of my job, I think, is like the client management and them kind of understanding how social even works. Um, like, I had to do a presentation to one of our clients and their whole board because they just were like, they're like, you're posting too much, you're doing this. And it's like, hold on, you are the CEO of this company. You're going to be seeing this content a lot. Like, look at your network. This is all that you're connected to 500 employees sharing stuff about you. You're going to see it. The regular person isn't going to see it as much because they're not interacting with this brand as much as you are, like being the CEO of the company. So sometimes it really is just like, I just gotta kind of drill them in and just be like, you got to do this. Sometimes they don't listen, but I think just kind of getting them there, or sometimes it just takes a while. It takes a couple years to really do that. And so it can be, I think it can be a little bit hard from the messaging perspective and just turning away people that might be used to it. Like, to answer your question, but I think it's something worth kind of risking a little bit.
I have one last question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned exclamation marks perform, gets higher clicks. Is there like a threshold of how many exclamation marks? And then are you it seems very small, but we actually avoid using exclamation marks
Oh,
because it
interesting.
feels too strong in our opinion of like
Yeah.
pushy. But it is interesting for me to see that you're getting more clicks
Yeah.
but then like do you do it in every single post and like do you do multiple exclamation marks like how just
Yeah. So we try to limit it to one. I don't know if any of you watch Seinfeld, but there was that huge punctuation episode that I'm always like, when I read posts, I have like tons of exclamation points. So I think that's like, we try to limit to one, and we don't do it in every post either. Otherwise, I think it just becomes obnoxious. So yeah, but the great question. Yeah, I think there's I think just in everything, there's like figuring out your rhythm and just this fine line of things. Like, obviously, like, we want to use hashtags, but it's like, okay, like, especially when Instagram came out, like, people would like use 400 and like hashtags in a post before they kind of limited how many you can use. But yeah, I mean, even on LinkedIn, it's like people will use 15 hashtags, and it's like, okay, just keep it to like the minimum, you know. I think you can go overboard and start to irritate people if you kind of use it like too much as well. So yeah, we try to mix them up a little bit and use the exclamation marks as much as we can. I think it has to fit too. Um, and yeah, I would limit it to like one a post, or one probably every three posts.
cool, thank you.
Thanks. Good questions, though. Yeah.
I don't want to throw it in case
People probably throw better than I catch. Um, we have clients that are promoting events all the time, and one of the things that we keep getting told is that if we put a link in the actual post in LinkedIn, that the algorithm doesn't like it. They're going to show it to less people, and so do our post and put the link in the comments, which to me just feels weird. I'm just curious if there's actually any truth to that.
Yeah, so I've actually found, for our industry at least, we get a more engagement when we put the actual link in, like, as a like in page, a native link in there as well. I think from a user perspective, it's annoying to have to go to the comments to find a link. But I kind of recommend testing it and see, and it's just I mean, that's kind of a big thing too. I mean, going to that testing thing. Sometimes people have their own opinions about stuff. One of our clients that was challenging too, they were like, they said something I think about our copy being like too short. And it's like, no, people want short copy. I know this. And so they finally were like, we're like fed up with like just having the conversation too. And we're like, fine, let's do a test. We'll do 2 ads 2 weeks apart and see which one does better. And the one with short copy did about 200 times better. So sometimes it's like, and we were like, thankfully they were open to doing that because it kind of nipped that in the bud. But um, sometimes it does just help to do these tests too and kind of figure out what is working. And I mean that's the thing too. I mean we can talk about best practices all day, but it might not work for your industry. It might not work for your uh, brand or your audience. An exclamation marks not might not work for everybody. So um, I think that's kind of the biggest thing too, just like figuring out where that link should go and how that works best. We do a lot like with event promotion, like trade shows or conferences as well, and so um, we've kind of had that engagement. We don't really plan the events ourselves, but more just the visibility that we're going to be there. We actually, for the conference that we just did for our clients, we would do an ad that we were going to be there about 3 weeks before. And then we do posts every day. And then we started like post show posts yesterday. So all those ads are kind of running as well. So we have a strategy kind of around those events too.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.